we'll cover those kinds of stories. Unfortunately, tonight is not one of those nights. And tonight's study takes us through a pretty sordid bit of the book of Judges. And honestly, I'll tell you straight up, you reap what you sow. God won't be mocked. And this story is an example of that. Remember, what we read is not just history. It's not just biblical history. It's more than history in that those characters we read about, though real, though this really happened, are examples to us, and we can use them in one of two ways. We can follow their example, and you don't want to follow Abimelech's example tonight, or the people of Shechem, or you can learn from their example. And when somebody makes mistakes in the Bible, and it's recorded for us, God is doing something really wonderful. He could have whitewashed everything and made all the saints of old look all pretty and perfect. Then we would lose hope. We know that they go through and experience things just like us, but we can also learn from them. And I want to learn from other people's mistakes. I don't want to make them all, right? I'm sure you guys agree. You've made mistakes of your own, and you don't want to repeat them. So, chapter 8, really 7 and 8, and even before it, 6, 7, 8, covered the life of Gideon, an amazing man, a lion-hearted man who faced the Midianites, Amalekites, and others, and then became a judge of Israel, leading the country into peace for 40 years. As he came to this great victory after it, and we saw some, what I believe to be mistakes in his conduct along the way. He stopped praying, stopped seeking the Lord, my perspective, and started just kind of making some weird decisions. Asked all of the army for their plunder, specifically the earrings of the Ishmaelites. There was 135,000 men that they had killed, and so that probably was a lot of earrings. 43 pounds of gold is what he asked for, and he made a special golden vest that became, we talked about this last week, so I'm not going to go into all of it. It became a snare to him and to his house. And all the people of Israel, rather than seeking the Lord through the priests and his ephod or vest, they would go and they would just worship this thing. It became kind of gross. Now, Gideon had been asked by the people, they said, rule over us, both you and your sons, your grandsons too. And remember what Gideon told them. He said, now the Lord needs to rule over you. And that was like, yeah, go Gideon. That's the right response. But then who remembers how many sons this dude had? Do you remember? Dee, do you remember? 70 sons. Poor woman, we joked about that. But there were many wives. That was also a problem. It's also a problem. And then we learned that even though he had many wives and many sons, there was also this other lady, a concubine in Shechem. And with that concubine, he had a son named Abimelech. And even though Gideon said, I'm not going to be your king, I'm not going to rule over you, my sons won't rule over, my grandsons won't rule over you, later in life, he gets with his concubine, and he names his son Abimelech, which means, my son is the son of the king. Thank you. I can't even remember. He was paying attention last week. This is great. Thanks, Elijah. The son of the king. And you kind of get this weird feeling with Gideon. Was he good? Was he bad? Did he start good? Did he end bad? I'm just saying I don't know that I would have wanted to end like Gideon. He had a great start, bad ending. We'll see Samson has a terrible start with their redemption in the end. I'm not saying that Gideon just threw his life away. It seems that there was a measure of peace and quiet, although man, there's so much more to life than just having a quiet, peaceable life, right? There's more. But that's what the country enjoyed under his leadership for 40 years. Now, his decisions may not have affected or ruined his life, but after the things he did in his life, after he was gone, they created some serious problems. And this is agonizing to read about, because when I think, man, I'm raising up 6 children, and I'm involved in other people's lives, and I ain't going to live forever. When I'm gone, what will be the legacy of my leadership? What will come of my investments? Will I leave things better than I found them? You know? And we'll see a little bit of the outcome of his life. Let's just pick up in verse 29 of chapter 8 and kind of rehash some of this stuff. Then Jerubbaal, that would be Gideon, his nickname, the son of Joash, went and dwelt in his own house. Gideon had 70 sons who were his own offspring, for he had many wives. And his concubine, who was in Shechem, also bore him a son whose name he called Abimelech, the son of a king. Son of the king is what Abimelech means. Now Gideon, the son of Joash, died at a good old age and was buried in the tomb of Joash's father in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. And so it was, notice this, as soon as Gideon was dead, as soon as Gideon wasn't around, that the children of Israel again played the harlot with the Baals, that would be a group of false gods, and made Baal Berith their god. Now, I didn't know who Baal Berith was, so I had to look up that second part, Lord of the what? It's actually Lord of the covenant. Lord of the covenant. As if this false god that they just invented keeps his promises better than the true God, who had rescued them from Egypt, brought them into a new nation, and delivered them from all of their enemies under Gideon's leadership. You almost get the sense that Baal Berith is the god of a prosperous people that forgets what made them prosper. I think that's America's history, by the way. What is it that made America great? It was the fact that it was founded upon principles straight out of Scripture, that godly men prayed and reasoned and established a government that was biblical in its foundations. This country was great because it honored God, and when it stops honoring God, will it continue to be great? So what we have here is they look to this other God, the God of the covenant, and they forgot the God that had covenanted with them and made so many precious promises to them. You know, we're all kind of, I should probably not use this word, but I don't have a good one, but suckers for this. We're all kind of suckers for promises the world makes to us that never are fulfilled. And we all have kind of a spiritual blindness, naturally, and amnesia to those things that God promises. When he even comes through, we often forget about the things that he does. It's just so easy, isn't it? So it's just interesting. Baal Berith was their god. They played the harlot. They left their true God for this god of their imagination. Thus the children of Israel did not remember the Lord their God, who had delivered them from the hands of all their enemies on every side, nor did they show kindness to the house of Jerubbaal, Gideon, in accordance with the good he had done for Israel. Now, this is kind of like it's foreshadowing chapter 9, because it tells us not only did they turn away from God, but they did not show kindness, or they weren't good to the house or lineage of Gideon. We're going to see that in a terrible way in chapter 9. So, verse 1. Then Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, the son of the king, right? You can see he embraced that name. He went to Shechem, to his mother's brothers and spoke with them and with all the family of the house of his mother's father, saying, "Please speak in the hearing of all the men of Shechem." And he said, "Tell them this, which is better for you, that all 70 of the sons of Jerubbaal," Gideon, "reign over you, or that just one reigns over you? Remember that I am your own flesh and bone." What's he trying to do here? You tell me. I need some audience participation. What's he trying to manipulate or work up here? He's trying to set himself up as a leader. In fact, if I asked you, and if you asked me last week, you say, who's the first king in Israel? You know what I would have said? King Saul. But we'd be wrong. Because this is the first king in Israel. He's a self-appointed king. He wasn't king over the entire nation, that's for sure. But he was still a man that pursued power and would do anything to gain it and anything to keep it. And so we see here him going to the people of Shechem. Remember, that's where his mom was from. She was a concubine of Shechem. And he said, "Hey, do you want all 70 of Gideon's people, all 70 of his sons ruling over you? What about letting me rule over you? Help me gain control, and then there'll just be one leader. And remember, I'm your buddy. I'm your brother. I'm family. I am your own flesh and bone." And his mother's brothers spoke all these words concerning him in the hearing of all the men of Shechem. And notice this, and their heart was inclined to follow Abimelech. Their heart was moved. It was moved. Now we're going to see what it was moved to do, which is really, really disgusting and despicable. But can someone or something move your heart from right, from God, from covenants, from promises, from morality? Are there things that can move you? We're going to see that these people are moved from a place of, they're worshiping Baal Berith and all that, but they're moved from one trajectory to a much steeper and darker trajectory. Their hearts were inclined to follow Abimelech. Their hearts were moved. For they said, it seemed reasonable, he is our brother. So they gave him 70 shekels of silver from the temple of Baal Berith, the Lord of the covenant, with which Abimelech, he took that money and he hired worthless and reckless men, and they followed him. What do you think is going to happen next? Man, it's tragic. And they went to his father's house at Ophrah, and they killed his brothers, the 70 sons of Jerubbaal, on one stone. Guys, this is sick. We're going to find out later that Abimelech actually is the one that kills every single one of them with his own hands. He is assisted by other men, but he does the killing himself. And you think, man, what kind of grudge or bitterness? We could kind of read between the lines. Maybe, they gave him a hard time. He wanted to be part of the family, but he was born to a concubine and them to legitimate, wives of Gideon. Maybe there was some hardship he endured, but he brings his murder, whatever excuses he tells himself, whatever lies he would tell himself or others, he is assisted by reckless and worthless men that are hired for silver. Their hearts were inclined, they were moved, love of power, love of money, and they come and he kills the 70 sons of Jerubbaal on one stone. Understand, this would be like a generation after George Washington, the nation grabbing all of George Washington's relatives and kids and putting them to death in public. Can you imagine? That's how sick this is. But Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, or Gideon, was left because he hid himself. They didn't notice that he was gone. He didn't notice he was there. And all the men of Shechem gathered together, all of Beth Milo, Milo, I don't know, Milo sounds better because there's a Milo close. And they went and made Abimelech king beside the terebinth tree at the pillar that was in Shechem. Just saying, no one really takes any ministry upon themselves. Everything we have in life, the opportunities we have, we receive. God entrusts them to us. And if you're striving to make yourself something, if you're positioning yourself to gain control or to take over, you're not in line with the way of God himself. God is good at elevating men, and he is good at humbling man when they seek to elevate themselves. Now, remember, Jotham had gotten away. Now we're going to hear from Jotham, verse 7. Now, when they told Jotham, when he found out, man, maybe he thought they were just going to throw him in jail or whatever when he ran and he hid. But when they told him, someone told Jotham, Abimelech just killed every single one of your brothers. Think about that. Put yourself in his shoes. How would you respond? Every single brother, everybody in your family murdered for the sake of political power and the gain of thereof. And so when he heard, he went, he stood on the top of Mount Gerizim, and he lifted his voice and cried out. Now, there's something you should know. The very place where they made Abimelech king was the very place where some hundreds of years before, when Joshua came into the promised land after the defeat at Ai and then the subsequent victory, and there was this ceremony that he had where the people of Israel rededicated themselves to God and God's plan. It was called the renewal of the covenant. And we actually just read about it, beside the terebinth tree at the pillar in Shechem, where Abimelech was proclaimed or self-proclaimed king, there was a stone pillar, and it actually had, you can read about this in Joshua 8, it had God's words and commands, maybe just the 10 commandments, maybe more, but it had them etched in stone. Can you imagine just the pride and the arrogance of this man to kill 70 men in cold blood to elevate himself, and he goes and he is proclaimed king right next to God's words, which are written in stone there on a pillar? But he did that, and you'll remember also that Shechem was a city in a valley, and on one side there was Mount Gerizim, and on the other side Mount Ebal. If you go there today and you stand on one of those two mountains, you can use just your human voice, unamplified voice. It's a natural amphitheater, and you can call down from the mountain, and people in that town or that valley can hear you. We know where this place is. And likewise from Ebal. And those two mountains, I don't know, does anybody want to know this? I just remembered it. Mount Gerizim was a mount of blessing, and because it's got like trees and it's beautiful. But right across the valley, immediately across, is Mount Ebal, which is like a barren rock. And Joshua said, hey, if you want to follow the Lord, look at Mount Gerizim. There'll be blessing. But if you don't, look at Mount Ebal. Your life will be barren. And so Jotham, anyway, all these guys are hanging out in Shechem and partying and having a good time now that Abimelech's king. Jotham finds out his heart is crushed. He goes up. No doubt he's remembering all that happened hundreds of years earlier with Joshua and the renewal of the covenant and the blessing proclaimed from Mount Gerizim. And he goes up there. It's quite steep. It's, I think, about 1,000 feet of elevation. And he lifts his voice and he cried out, and they could hear him. And he said to them, and now this is going to be, I kind of imagined, if that had happened to me, how poised would I be to deliver God's word to the people that killed my family? But it's kind of amazing when you think about it. He says some profound things from a place of profound pain. It's possible. It's possible. There's a pastor that I really respect. His name's John Corson. And he, in the course of ministry, pastoring at Applegate Christian Fellowship out in, I want to say, Oregon, this was years ago, he lost his wife in a car accident and continued to pastor. The church was like, hey, take a year off. And he said, no, it's not just, I can't, and I don't want to. So please allow me to keep serving. And they did. And then a few years later, on the same road, his daughter was in a car accident and was killed. And the same thing happened again. And he just, it wouldn't have been wrong for him to take a year or two. I mean, now he's a single dad, and he's lost one of his children, a beautiful girl. She was a teenager or a little older. And but he continued to serve. That was his choice. And in some way, we just see, man, Jotham is quite a man to be able to proclaim something to these murderous men down in the valley of Shechem. Listen to me, you men of Shechem, that God may listen to you, which is kind of a crazy thing. He's like, I want you to hear what I have to say, because if you want God's help, listen up. There's always a way to come to God, no matter what you've done. Would you have presented that to the people that killed your family? I don't think so. It'd be so tremendously difficult, but he does. And he tells them it's kind of poetic. I mean, maybe he was a poet. Maybe he was a little artsy. He's going to share something, and it's not hard to understand. He says, the trees once went forth to anoint a king. Remember, he's shouting from a mountain. They're all like, can we get to him in time to kill him too? He's 1,000 feet up, though, so no. So they just have to listen to him. He says, the trees once went forth to anoint a king over them, and they said to the olive tree, reign over us, just like they'd said to Gideon. Remember, reign over us. But the olive tree said to them, should I cease giving my oil, with which they honor God and men, and go to sway over trees? Nah, I'm content, just me and God. Then the trees said to the fig tree, they said, you come and reign over us. Man's insatiable desire to have someone leading him other than God. And you come and reign over us. But the fig tree said to them, should I cease my sweetness and my good fruit and go to sway over trees? He says, no. Then the trees said to the vine, you come and reign over us. And the vine said to them, should I cease my new wine, which cheers both God and men? Just to note, new wine in biblical times had almost no alcohol in it. Much, much, much less than even wine today. So, yes, Jesus drank wine. Yes, we see men drinking wine. Yes, wine cheers both God and men in its proper use. But drunkenness is always sinful, and it ruins men and homes and relationships. So, just a little... but the vine said to them, should I cease my new wine, which cheers both God and men, and go to sway over trees? So the vine, the fig tree, the olive tree say, no, we are content to just be what God made us and to bless God with our life. Now, this is interesting and a little bit of a sideshow, so bear with me for a second. Where did Jesus spend most of his life? I would like an answer. Where did Jesus spend most of his life? Nazareth. What was he doing there? He was just working. I'm a carpenter. He was a carpenter. Where did he spend most of his life? He spent the first 30 years of his life in obscurity. He wasn't in public ministry. From the time that he had his bar mitzvah, about 13 on, he would have been working his dad's trade. Much of that time he probably spent alone. At some point, I should say, his father, Joseph, died, because he's not in the gospel accounts after Jesus visits the temple at 12. So between 12 and 30, when Jesus' public ministry began, his dad passed away. Do you think that time was a waste of time for Jesus? Do you know who had him all to himself? The Father had Jesus all to himself through those years. It wasn't a waste of time. Think about John the Baptist. John the Baptist went out in the wilderness for many years before his public ministry began. Do you think that was a waste of time? Him all alone out there, this man filled with God's Spirit and great potential. Was it a waste of time? No. God was enjoying John the Baptist himself. Moses was a man trained and learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians. He led Pharaoh's armies before he turned 40, killed an Egyptian, and fled for his life. He went out, to the deserts of Midian. He got married. He managed Jethro's flocks in the wilderness all alone for 40 years. He led these flocks in the wilderness. Such great potential. Do you think that time was wasted? No, God had him all to himself. Even Paul, when he got saved, went for years out to Arabia in the wilderness, and God had him all to himself. And there was great value and purpose in that time. And I don't know what you guys do during your day, the things that you think aren't all that spiritual or all that important, but God wants to be part of every one of our lives and all the things that we're doing. And whether we're putting up siding, or we're working in a school, or we're driving a bus, or we're retired, or we have a coffee break, God just wants to be a part of our lives. He loves us that much, and he enjoys us that much. He likes us, not just love us. And I think it's kind of cool with the fig tree and the olive tree and the vine. They're just content. They don't need to be king. They're just content to do what God made them to do and enjoy God. They don't need to be over all the trees. But then, Jotham, remember, he's eloquent, but he's up there and he says, well, then all the trees said to the bramble, like the thorn bush, it's low, it doesn't have any shade, it's just stubble, it's the bramble. They said, well, you come and reign over us. Man, their standards are dropping. And the bramble said to the trees, if in truth you anoint me as king over you, then come and take shelter in my shade. Oh, the bramble's got a big head. The bramble is who? Abimelech, right? Obviously. And then the bramble says, but if not, if you won't come and take shelter in my shade, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. The bramble says, hey, let me rule over you, and if you turn on me, I'll get you, right? And really, Jotham is going to now give a prophecy of you reap what you sow, and God saw what you did, and you can expect that he will not be mocked, and you will be repaid. Vengeance is the Lord's. He'll take care of business. Here's a profound biblical concept. No one truly gets away with anything. It certainly looks like that in our lifetime, in our earthly perspective. But we don't see eternity, and we don't see everything. No one really gets away with anything. There's an opposite and pleasant truth. No good thing that you do goes unnoticed by God. Both are true. So Jotham is going to make a prophecy. He's going to speak here. Now, therefore, if you have acted in truth and sincerity in making Abimelech king, and if you have dealt well with Jerubbabel and his house, and have delivered him and delivered you out of the hand, if you see brain fart, here we go. Let's start in verse 16. And if you have dealt well with Jerubbabel and his house, and have done to him as he deserves, obviously they didn't, for my father fought for you. Let me remind you some things. Risked his life and delivered you out of the hand of Midian. But you have risen up against my father's house this day, and you killed his 70 sons on one stone, and made Abimelech, the son of his female servant, king over the men of Shechem, because he is your brother. What are you doing? If then you have acted in truth and sincerity with Jerubbabel and with his house this day, then rejoice in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. But if not, it's kind of rhetorical, like we know it's not. But if not, let fire come from Abimelech and devour the men of Shechem and Beth Milo, and let fire come from the men of Shechem and from Beth Milo, and devour Abimelech. And Jotham ran away and fled, and he went to Beer, and he dwelt there for fear of Abimelech, his brother. This is a prophecy of mutually assured destruction for Abimelech and for those men of Shechem that supported him. Now, verse 22, after Abimelech had reigned over Israel 3 years, the honeymoon's going to come to a quick end. God sent a spirit of ill will between Abimelech and the men of Shechem. And the men of Shechem dealt treacherously. That means it was kind of secretive with Abimelech, that the crime done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might be settled by God, and their blood be laid on Abimelech, their brother, who killed them, and on the men of Shechem, who aided him in the killing of his brothers. And the men of Shechem set men in ambush against him, that would be against Abimelech, on the tops of the mountains, and they robbed all who passed by them along that way, and it was told Abimelech. So they're treacherously seeking an opportunity to kind of accost him, to ambush him, and Abimelech finds out. Now, we're introduced to another character, one godless hero after another in this account today. But now Gaal, the son of Ebed, came with his brothers and went over to Shechem. So new character, new sheriff in town, I guess. And the men of Shechem put their confidence in him, and so they went out into the fields and gathered grapes from their vineyards and trod them and made merry. And they went into the house of their God and ate and drank and cursed Abimelech. I think maybe there's a little bit of drinking there as they made merry and they went into the house of their God. You can kind of, a bunch of guys, dudes hanging out, celebrating. Alcohol is definitely involved. We'll kind of see that. They start, they look at Gaal. He seems pretty good. Maybe he's their best chance to get rid of Abimelech. And they're all standing around cursing Abimelech. Then Gaal, verse 28, the son of Ebed said, "Who is Abimelech? And who is Shechem, that we should serve him? Is he not the son of Jerubbaal? And is not Zebul his officer?" Didn't he appoint that guy? "Serve the men of Hamor, the father of Shechem. But why should we serve him? If only this people were under my authority." Now, should they listen to this guy? What happened when they listened to Abimelech, right? Nothing. Nothing is going well for them. I'm glad you guys are paying attention. If only, I just find this interesting because people really do talk like this. If only this people were under my authority, he says, then I would remove Abimelech. And everybody's like, yeah. And so he said to Abimelech, he trash talks him, right? He's boasting, he's bragging. Now the trash talk comes. So he sends this message to Abimelech, who's not there. He says, "Increase your army and come out and face me." But when Zebul, the ruler of the city, he would be Abimelech's officer, he's kind of like running things while Abimelech is away, he heard the words of Gaal, the son of Ebed. His anger was aroused because he is on Abimelech's side. And he sent messengers to Abimelech secretly, saying, "Take note, Gaal, the son of Ebed, and his brothers have come to Shechem, and here they are, fortifying the city against you. Now, therefore, get up by night, you and the people who are with you, and lie in wait in the field. And it shall be, as soon as the sun is up in the morning, that you shall rise early and rush upon the city. And when he and the people who are with him come out against you, you may then do to them as you find opportunity." Now, if you were hanging out in Shechem, which had walls and gates, and you sent this trash talk to Abimelech, what would you do to the city to prepare for battle? You'd fortify it, right? You'd get ready for a siege. You'd do everything you could to gain advantage. And he thinks Abimelech is going to come, a little later. He's going to take his time. He's going to gather forces. He's going to come in the day, and they're going to draw battle lines. And then they got the city, and, he's out in the country. But Zebul gives, Abimelech a heads up, and then says, come quickly, come at night, lie in wait in the field, and then come suddenly upon the city before they've had their opportunity to sufficiently fortify it. And so Abimelech, verse 34, and all the people who were with him rose by night and lay in wait against Shechem in 4 companies. When Gaal, the son of Ebed, went out and stood in the entrance to the city gate, Abimelech and the people who were with him rose from lying in wait. And when Gaal saw the people, he said to Zebul, look, people are coming down from the tops of the mountains. So, I don't know if you care, but my opinion, they were making merry, trash talk, sending notes of, hey, come, make your army bigger because I'm going to destroy you. They've been drinking for a while, and now it's early in the morning. This dude's hungover, I believe. We'll kind of see, just my opinion, but he looks out. He goes to the city gate where the rulers would gather, and he looks out and he says, whoa, there's people. They're coming down from the mountains. And Zebul, who is secretly for Abimelech, but is one of the officers of the city, he says, no, you just see the shadows of the mountains as if they were men. Man, just open your eyes a little wider. Were you drinking heavy last night? And so Gaal spoke again as more and more people are coming forward. They were lying in wait. Now they're coming fast. He said, no. See, people are coming down from the center of the land, and another company is coming from the diviner's terebinth tree. They're coming from 2 sides. And Zebul, now he knows Gaal is tracking, and so he's going to speak up. You can imagine the tone. I don't know that I can do it. He goes, where indeed is your mouth now, Gaal? You who said, who is Abimelech, that we should serve him? Are not these the people whom you despise? Go out, if you will, and fight with them now. And I think this is part of Zebul's encouragement. Hey, go face him in the open field. The city's not fortified. You're not ready for a siege. Go out with your men. And he's hoping Abimelech's going to kick his butt. So Gaal went out, leading the men of Shechem, and fought with Abimelech. And Abimelech chased him, and he fled from him. And many fell wounded to the very entrance of the gate. So all the men that went out kind of wiped out, and they had to retreat back into the city. Then Abimelech dwelt at Arumah, and Zebul drove Gaal and his brothers, the troublemakers, out of the city so they would not dwell in Shechem. And you think, man, okay, that ain't that bad, right? This hasn't gone, Abimelech's still alive. Most of the people of Shechem, some of them, died in that fight. But, Gaal's gone. Is that the conclusion? Oh, it's so much worse. It's so much worse. So Abimelech, in his thirst for blood and his, just desire to, he's a proud man. You gotta make people listen. He's not done at all. In verse 42, and it came about on the next day that the people, the uninvolved people of Shechem, they went out into the field to plant, to harvest, to do all their normal things, to get water, to, look around, to travel. Well, they thought the conflict was over. They weren't all intimately involved in, all of this fighting and stuff. But word of it came, and they told Abimelech. And so he took his people, he divided them into 3 companies and lay in wait in the field. And he looked, and there were all the people of the city coming out of the city, and he rose against them and he attacked them. Then Abimelech and the company that was with him rushed forward and stood at the entrance of the gate of the city. And the other 2 companies rushed upon all who were in the field. So they cut off escape into the city. And then these other companies killed everyone in the field. So Abimelech fought against the city all that day. Then he turned his attention on the city. He took the city, and he killed the people who were in it. And he demolished the city. And notice this, he sowed it with salt. No one would be able to easily practice horticulture or agriculture there again. He sowed it with salt. It's almost like this guy's a little bitter. He's like a little angry, just a little bit. What a guy. What a guy. There's a truth we could say. when you embrace sin, there is no telling how far it will lead. You know, I don't think Abimelech was like walking around as a little kid saying, when I grow up, I'm going to kill all 70 of my brothers on one stone. And then I'm going to attack this city and I'm going to defeat it. And then when all the townspeople come out the next day, I'm still mad, so I'm going to kill every single person in the field and then sow the city with salt. Like, I don't think he was walking around as a little kid thinking, that's my life goal. But along the way, that's who he became. We do well to ask ourselves, how does a man end up there? How does a person end up doing things they swore they'd never do? It's a sad story. It started with it started with Gideon, didn't it? And then it was replacing God's, buying into a false promise, a God who said he could deliver, but all that he's delivered really is death and destruction so far, and we're not even done. So verse 46, just a little farther, guys. We'll be done slightly early. Now when all the men of the tower of Shechem had heard that, they entered the stronghold of the temple of the god Berith. So it seems as if there's like a part of the city or something immediately next to it. There's like a stronghold, like a castle and its keep. So they retreat to the tower of Shechem, into the stronghold. It would be called of the temple of the god Berith. I think, man, maybe this God is going to keep us safe, but it is a stronghold. This is our best chance. And it was told to Abimelech that all the men of the tower of Shechem were gathered together. Then Abimelech went up to Mount Zalmon, he and all the people who were with him. And Abimelech took an axe in his hand. He cut down a bow from the trees, and he took it and laid it on his shoulder. Then he said to the people who were with him, "What you have seen me do, make haste and do as I have done." So each of the people likewise cut down his own bow and followed Abimelech, put them against the stronghold, and set the stronghold on fire above them, so that all the people of the tower of Shechem died, about 1,000 men and women. This is like one of those movies with just senseless killing. It's just like, why? Every one of those people created. Every one of those people mattered. It doesn't mention children, but that many men and women, where are their kids? Are they with them? Are they just not mentioned because they were so numerous? Man, this guy's got so much blood on his hand, and he's just he's walking through he's strutting through the earth like he owns it. Then Abimelech went to Thebez, and he encamped against Thebez. He's like on a killing spree. He's an expert in battle now. He's had a couple of successes here, and he took it. But there was a strong tower in that city, and all the men and the women, all the people of the city, they fled there, and they shut themselves in, and they went to the top of the tower. And so Abimelech came as far as the tower, and he fought against it, and he drew near the door of the tower to burn it with fire. You can imagine him saying, "Hey guys, remember what we did last time? Let's do it again." Right? But a certain woman dropped an upper millstone, those 5 to 10 pounds, on Abimelech's head and crushed his skull. We're like, finally. I said it was a tough Bible study, but finally we're ending on a good note. Now, it's just interesting. I don't know, they probably shouldn't say this in mixed company. He's still alive. His skull is crushed, but he's still alive because he's going to have a conversation. He's in the throes of death. And he's still proud, even when dying. I've been around people that have been passing. I've seen beautiful things. I've seen beautiful anticipation of coming glory, and I have seen just things that I wish I don't want to tell you about. I've seen people pass in grace, and I've seen people pass in fear, in trepidation, in anger, and bitterness. I've seen it all. Let's look at Abimelech. So his head is crushed now, and he called 54, he called quickly to the young man, his armor bearer, his stud, I guess, and he said to him, Draw your sword, kill me, lest men say of me, a woman killed him. He didn't want anybody to know. Hey, guess what? Anybody that reads their Bible knows what happened to this dude. The Holy Spirit recorded the words of a dying man, an ogre of a man from thousands of years ago, to tell us something. What is that something that he wants us to learn from? You reap what you sow. You will reap what you sow. You will reap what you sow for ill, and you will reap what you sow for good. And God, knowing who we are and what we've done, will not remove consequences from us for the things that we've done that were wrong, but he will take us as his own children and extend through Jesus Christ, the Son of God, mercy enough to cover those sins and bring us into eternity and into a relationship of love with him, even as we're still alive. What a gracious God to do such things. But, you know, Abimelech, man, he's not looking up. He's looking to his stud muffin. He says, draw your sword and kill me, lest men say of me, a woman killed him. So his young man thrust him through, and he died. And when the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, they departed, every man to his own place. You know how I was talking about Gideon, like what we do affects other people and what will our legacy be? I don't know. That's my attempt at waxing poetic. But when Abimelech died, where did everybody go? They looked at him, they looked at the tower, they looked at the dead people, they just dropped their bows, like their tree trunk things that they were going to burn, and they all were like, this is stupid. What are we doing this for? And they went home. Abimelech thought he was an awesome leader, didn't he? I mean, he's just destroying everybody, he's wrecking havoc, he's killing people. But ultimately, he led people nowhere. He led people nowhere. I think maybe a question is, you know, for myself or for you, in the things that God has entrusted you, the leadership, your family, whatever, if you weren't around and people just say, I guess let's go home, or would your life actually move them in godly ways? They were moved to join him, but then when he was gone, this one man's ambition was gone. They're just like, see you next week. You know, it's just kind of sad, really sad. After they saw that Abimelech was dead, their king, they departed, every man to his place. Guess that didn't really work out. Thus God repaid the wickedness of Abimelech, which he had done to his father by killing his 70 brothers. And all the evil of the men of Shechem God returned on their own heads, and on them came the curse of Jotham, the son of Jerubbaal. Father, we thank you for what we read, and I know there were parts of it that I needed to hear and think through, Lord, and certainly I believe that is true of others here tonight. Lord, I don't know what. I don't love stories like this, but I know they're important, Lord. Lord, your word tells us that if we humble ourselves under the mighty hand of God, you will exalt us in due time. Don't have to lift ourselves up. Don't have to self-exalt, Lord. You've already chosen us. You died for us. Lord, you've forgiven us. You've gifted us. You sustain us. You help us. You answer us. You remember us. You guide us. You have everything we need in the God that gave himself for us. Oh, help us to just enjoy you. And Lord, not seek to gain anything that you don't desire for us to gain, but to be content in you and what we have in you alone. Pray this in your name. Amen. Grace and peace. Look at that. 5 minutes